and welcome to the Newbery Report, where grown women read children's books and then argue about them. And today, to close out the 1970s, we're talking about The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. And here we are! Yay! Back at the Newbery Report Central offices, where we're here to report to you on the 1979 Newbery Award-winning book, The Westing Game. Yay! Bum, 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 bum.
By Ellen Raskin.
By Ellen Raskin. So, this book is extra special, not just because it's great, which it is, and we'll get into all of the whys and wherefores in a moment, but it is the last book of the 70s. Yay! Ever. No other books.
No books were written in the 70s after this one.
Yeah, this is the last
except
one.
for a lot.
And also the 80s.
And also and all the books that have been written.
Time. This is our first decade that we've completed. Hooray.
Go us.
Go
Woo.
us. So we're going to take a little bit of a pause and look at our lives and respond to some feedback and see if there's a way that we can bring back our next decade stronger. So if you have thoughts about what books you'd like us to do next, what decade you'd like us to tackle, send those along, tweet them at us, whatever it is that you use as your method of communication. Write a letter. We know from previous episodes that Carolyn does not write letters.
I do not.
But that doesn't mean you can't. And I'm pointing at the generic you, not Carolyn. Great. So, as I've already said a couple of times, Carolyn Burns is here. Hello, Carolyn. How are you?
Hi, Carrie. I'm great. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Thank you yet again for joining me on this ever-changing adventure of children's literature. And, of course, we are exploring Newbery Award-winning books. Those are books that have been considered by the American Library Association to be the greatest contribution by an American writer to children's literature written in English in the prior year. So what's fun about this book is that it won. It feels like it won against all odds. It's so enjoyable.
It's so, this is my favorite book, by the way, from my childhood. There are very few books that stand up, and Westing Game is one of them. And I'm so excited we get to talk about it.
I'm so excited, too. I was a huge Agatha Christie fan, which isn't children's literature, but I read
as a child you were a fan, or like as an adult you've become an Agatha Christie fan?
I mean, I guess it depends on where childhood starts, but I was reading a lot of Agatha Christie, like, really young. Like 10, 11. I just love them. They're so great. And I would, like, try and figure them out. And I can't remember for the life of me if I figured out Westing Game ahead of the book or not. I don't think I did. Of course, now reading it a second time, painfully obvious.
But isn't that interesting? I definitely did not get the mystery when I was reading it as a child, or even when I first reread it as an adult and had forgotten it.
That's true. It was when we started getting the clues that I was like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah.
I think I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
But I knew there was stuff I didn't remember, which we'll get into shortly. But first, we say this about every episode, but in particular this episode is a mystery. So if you haven't read the book, we might ruin it for you. And we don't want to ruin your experience.
I would very highly recommend you go back and read this book. And if you keep listening to this podcast, you're going to know how it ends. And that might be great, but it might ruin it for you. So pause, go read the book, come back in a day, because it's a quick book, and listen to this podcast then.
We're not real people. I mean, we are, but the point at which you're receiving it is just a digital copy, which will wait for you.
Yeah.
So you're not rude, is what I'm saying. Like, it's not rude to pause this, come back.
But definitely come back after you've read it.
After.
Because we're going to talk all kinds of crap about it.
All right, we good? Everybody's gone that hasn't read it? Great.
Okay.
So just a quick refresher for anyone that has read it either a while ago or even recently and just wants a quick reminder of what happened. Carolyn, why don't you treat us with a reading of the back of the book?
The back of the book. So this is the synopsis according to the back of my copy of Puffin Modern Classics Westing Game. A bizarre chain of events begins when 16 unlikely people gather for the reading of Samuel W. Westing's will. And though no one knows why the eccentric, game-loving millionaire has chosen a virtual stranger and a possible murderer to inherit his vast fortune, one thing's for sure. Sam Westing may be dead, but that won't stop him from playing one last game.
I want to read that book.
Dun, dun, dun! I love it. I love this book.
It sounds so good. So, obviously, we've hit the do you like it or not section of this podcast, and the answer is yes. So, we don't have to spend too much time here, but I just love throwing my knowledge of literary devices around. And I have to say, hold on. It's a good thing. This book is written very specifically in third-person omniscient in a way that we have yet to experience.
I love it, yeah.
In a way that really changes with each person that's whose thoughts are being expressed, even though it's through this third-person perspective. Although there are a couple of instances which we can get into or not get into where the word I is used in the narration, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's the narrator really takes on the tone of each person as the ownership of it sort of flows from one character to another in such a fun way.
I love it.
This book is so funny.
It's so fun. It's funny. It's interesting. And I think that it's easy to think that this is a very fluffy book. And in some ways it is, but I think that it's not. It's so enjoyable because it's so well written. And bravo to you, Ms. Raskin, for writing 16-plus characters that are so flushed out. Every single one of them has such a distinct personality and point of view and way of life, and that's difficult to do. It's difficult to create one flushed out character, and you've created 16 plus. And one of them is so impressive.
One of them is a mistake.
Yes. Oh, the mistake.
And I just want to raise this one concern that I had with the continuity of the book, and then otherwise I'm pretty much good. Why are the apartments C and D on every floor? Like, that makes no sense.
Dun, dun, dun.
Like, normally you have L and R for left and right, or F and R, front and rear, or N and S, north and south, or just A and B, because that's the beginning of the alphabet. Why do we have 2C, 2D, 3C, 3D, 4C, 4D?
I have no idea. I missed that detail.
It bothers me so much. Except the only thing I can think of is that we wanted Ford 4D.
It's
Ford.
Yeah. She probably shoehorned that in there.
Yeah. That feels like it was reverse engineered. But yeah. And also, like, who puts
But with mysteries, aren't a lot of things reverse engineered?
Oh, for
Doesn't
sure.
that inevitably happen when you're creating a just wonderful mystery
But
novel?
that's so have you ever heard of an apartment building with apartments C and D being the only apartments on that floor? Like, that's weird, right?
No. Yeah, it's very strange.
So weird. Also, who has a restaurant on the top floor of an apartment building?
Very strange as well.
Which is explained by the fact that no one goes to it. So it's certainly not successful. But anyway. Okay, great. On to the good things.
Let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
Shall we?
Yes.
And in this particular case, I literally mean the very first line of the book.
Ooh, good.
Which we haven't really done that much in this podcast. The first line, last line.
Yeah.
We should do it more because, man, is that interesting to me. But this book so the very first line in this book is, the sun sets in the west. Just about everyone knows that. But sunset towers faced east. Strange. Do you not? I feel like that's the whole book.
Yeah.
It gives everything away. Like, now that you know how it ends,
Yeah.
it gives everything away.
And yet, though.
You immediately get the, like, west, east.
Yeah.
And how strange.
Yeah.
I remember reading it and coming back, this particular reading for this podcast that I reread it, I knew how it ended, and I was like, oh, it's so obvious.
Yeah. The directionals. Yeah.
What great foreshadowing that isn't portrayed as foreshadowing. I love it.
But it doesn't bother me because a building is three-dimensional. So one of the sides of the building does face the sunset, like does face west. It's just the back.
Or maybe that's why apartment CD faces east and AB it's just blank space. It's just concrete.
No side of the
No
building
sunset.
faces the sunset.
Yeah.
Yes, but she immediately says, this is not the world that you're expecting. Strange!
Strange! Exclamation point. What a wonderful way to open a book.
Yeah.
I think it's just, and a mystery on top of that. And then to have East and West play such a pivotal role in the
all four.
answer.
North, east, south, and west.
All the cardinal directions.
Mm-hmm. I love that, speaking of stuff that happens, like, right away, that nobody noticed when they went to go see the apartments that their name was already on the mailbox.
Yeah.
In one day, Barney Northrop had rented all Sunset Towers to the people whose names were already printed on the mailbox in an alcove off the lobby. Like, what? That's so creepy. Nobody looked?
I know. And 6 letters were delivered, just 6. 6 appointments were made, and one by one, family by family, talk. Barney Northrop led the tours around and about Sunset Towers, and every single one of them booked it. Who is that inclined to move? I feel like that's a dangerous game you're playing here,
but he knew.
Sam Westing, because you are assuming everyone is going to move in and be a part of this.
Oh, gosh, we just skipped over page 2. I can't even believe we did this. So 1, 2, 3, the 4th paragraph starts with, the delivery boy was 62 years old, and there was no such person as Barney Northrop. What?
Can we just read the whole first page? Is amazing. There's so much that's laid out. And, like, you come to find out, and this is part of why I love this book so much, is that there are so many red herrings.
Yeah.
There's so much misdirection and misleading and things that never pay off and things that do and things that don't. Like, I don't know if I feel like things don't pay off. I love how honest this book is. Like, she says outright what matters and what doesn't in a lot of cases. Like, the letters were signed Barney Northrop. 2 sentences later, next sentence, and there was no such person as Barney Northrop. Like, that already tells me, like, what? And it lets me question immediately whether anybody is anybody. I love that the letter that is signed Barney Northrop has a list of bullet points of why you should move into this apartment, the last of which is et cetera, et cetera. I also love P.S. I am also renting ideal space for a doctor's office in the lobby, a coffee shop with entrance from the parking lot, and a high-class restaurant on entire top floor. Like, if someone delivered that letter personally to me and that's exactly what I was looking for, I'd be like, this is a trick. Yeah. No one seems to be weirded out that they are very obviously being led into living here.
I mean, there's no way to know. Like, there are doctor's offices all over the city, you know?
Yeah, but it's just a delivered letter to them. What? I get so much spam mail that I just throw out.
Yeah. Well, this was at a time when people opened their mail, Carolyn, and they sent letters.
Gosh, you're right, Carrie. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. And what's with this one-way glass, right? The whole building is made with one-way glass so that you can see out, but you don't ever need curtains so that you can always see and no one can see in on you, which sounds like... So it's always tinted, right? Or is it a mirror glass? I don't know,
but
that's apparently a big selling point of this building.
New York needs more of that, because every time I walk past a high-rise and I can look right into someone's living room, I just think how weird and awkward that is.
I don't want to know what you're watching on TV.
Yeah. So where should we jump in? There's just so much to unpack in this mystery.
I love Barney Northrop, even though there's no such person as Barney Northrop, because he says to each person, there's only one apartment left. So each time he says there's only one apartment left, and then, which we know is a lie because he says it from his first appointment.
Mm-hmm. He's a salesman that
Yeah, and he says, you're really in luck, Barney Northrop said, for the 6th and last time. There's only one apartment left, and you'll love it. It was meant for you.
Mm-hmm. Page 5, they're talking about all the people that have moved in now. Who were these people, these specially selected tenants? They were mothers and fathers and children. A dressmaker, a secretary, an inventor, a doctor, a judge. And oh yes, one was a bookie, one was a burglar, one was a bomber, and one was a mistake. Barney Northrop had rented one of the apartments to the wrong person.
And what's crazy...
if that alone does not make you want to keep reading this book, you are a robot person.
Ugh, robot people. What I love about this, that I don't know if I realized until maybe just this moment, is that it never says there's a murderer there, which we assume is because the murder hasn't happened yet, but in reality it's because there is no murder.
He even makes a good point of saying that even in the will, he says, one of you took my life from me, and nowhere does it actually say murder. But it's just the way that we perceive things, and it's the way that people respond to a situation that everyone assumed he was murdered, and it never happened. How intriguing.
And he tells them it's what you don't have that matters, and like tells them to work together, and they don't do it. And Theo's like, I think we should all work together and look at our clues, and everyone's like, no.
And I love that it very specifically says it's not what you have, it's what you don't have. And Theo and Doug, two of the younger people, are the only ones that take that to mean like, hey, let's pool our clues.
Yeah.
I feel like this whole thing could have been solved so much earlier. Although, I gotta be honest, once you pool the clues and you figure it out, it still is a red herring that leads to the wrong answer. But that to me, even as a child reading it, seems so obvious. You know, like we as a reader are given all of the clues. And I just had a great time reading this, knowing that it was America the Beautiful. I actually had a bookmark that I wrote the words out to America the Beautiful. Mm-hmm. And as they came up in clues, I underlined them so that I could like solve it as I went.
So you knew that was the answer, or you just
I
realized?
did. Well, I remembered that all the clues were America the Beautiful, and I remembered the north, south, east, west. But I couldn't remember like exactly how they tied together.
Yeah.
And they kind of don't.
Yeah.
It's still like I still have problems with the ending and with like what the mystery is and what all the clues mean, because like you kind of
it's this weird sort of revenge fantasy that he's executing, but in the process of it realizes that I think everyone is able to come to like a good place about stuff, and everybody's able to reach some kind of closure through the process of this game, which it's unclear if he anticipated or whether he was just still mad at Bertha and like wanted to take revenge out on her, which is odd because he has this private investigator following his ex-wife around for her whole life who, spoiler alert, falls in love with her. Yeah, the humor overall in this book is just so fantastic. Like arguably what sort of starts the excitement of the book, because we have this like weird sort of residential situation where people are just moving, which we're only have these like tiny snippets of what's interesting about it. Barney Northrop is introducing everybody, but he's not a real person. The names are on the mailboxes before they even move in. You know, they were clearly specifically ID'd for this place.
And one is a mistake.
And one is a mistake. Who is the mistake? But what gets them going, what gets Turtle into the mansion in the first place is the story that Otis Amber tells, the 62-year-old delivery boy, who they consistently call delivery boy.
Yeah.
Even though he's 62 years old.
Delivery man.
Yeah. At what point do you become a delivery man?
Never,
apparently. Yeah. Tells this scary story about some kids that broke into the Westing house and saw the dead. We don't know what they saw, but they came out running and their hands were covered in blood. And all that one of them would say was purple waves, like over and over again. And so all three shivered listening to this story. Doug, Theo, and Turtle. Mm-hmm. Poor kid, the doorman said. All that pain and suffering for $1 bet. Make it $2 for each minute I stay in there, and you're on, Turtle says.
Yes! She's so great.
Bring it!
And she does. She goes in. She stays there for a certain amount of time. She does, you know, we all know she gets freaked out. She runs out, you know, because she touches the supposedly dead corpse's hand, which is a wax dummy.
Yeah.
And then she runs out and she's so scared. And like the first thing she says is like, you owe me $24. Yeah. And I was like, the gumption on this kid. Am I right?
She wants to be paid for the work that she does.
Which she deserves, you know?
We'll be right back with some more after this break.
This episode of the Newbery Report is sponsored by Payfully. Renting your home or spare room can be a great way to earn some extra income, but actually getting paid can take months. That's where Payfully comes in. Payfully is a safe and secure way to get paid for your upcoming reservations within 24 hours of them being booked. Payfully deposits directly into your bank account with funds usually available the same day. It works with all the major platforms, Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, and others, and they've helped thousands of hosts expand their business or cover unexpected expenses. Visit payfully.co, that's payfully.co, for $20 off your first request with code Newbery. That's payfully.co, promo code Newbery, Newbery.
Hello, listeners. Are you a business owner? Your next customer might be listening right now, just like you are. You can let them know who you are by sponsoring this show. Just email us at hello@citizenracecar.com. That's HELLO@citizenracecar.com. And now more on the Westing game.
The whole thing stunk so much of like how much is being purposefully set up by Sam Westing slash Sandy slash
Barney
slash
Julian
Eastman. Yeah. And how much just sort of happens to fall in place.
Yeah.
And I think you can make the case for both of them. You could make the case that like he really was like the architect of all of this and really set out every single aspect of this to be put into motion. But you could also say that a lot of it happens sort of secondhand. But like how interesting. So my favorite part of the novel by far is when Sandy is set up with Judge J.J. Ford. J.J. Ford?
Yeah.
Judge J.J. Ford. And they're the partner selection, which in itself is strange that like Judge Ford is one of the only people other than Crow that has had copious experience with the actual man as a person.
Yeah.
And yet she, for all of her hard work and like deduction skills, cannot figure out that she is standing across from Sam Westing this whole time.
Right. You would think that his voice would sound like him or anything. I mean, I understand that he like puts in fake teeth and he had this car accident, so
It like messed up his face.
Yeah.
I get it.
But people still know what Mark Hamill looks like even after his car accident. He did a whole other Star Wars film.
Yeah. Great movie, by the way.
Yeah.
So Sandy is her partner, which in itself, if you think about it, is just absolutely crazy. But then he becomes this like quasi-private eye for her, and he starts coming up with all of these biographies of all of these people that they're investigating, which is fascinating because he obviously knows everything.
Yeah. So it's just what he opts to give to her.
To share with her. And reading this, knowing that, like, again, I can't stress enough, like, if you've read this book, read it again knowing how it ends, because it just makes everything so much more interesting.
I forgot that it was Sandy, so I should read it again knowing that it's Sandy.
Yeah. So they're talking about, like, Sidel Pulaski, which we find out is the mistake. It was supposed to be Sybil Pulaski, and he found the wrong person. And he's reading her bio, and the judge says, strange, a suspicious malady, no apparent Westing connection. Somehow, Sidel Pulaski did not seem to fit in.
Yeah, he just commits to the mistake, though, clearly.
Yeah.
Because he figures it out at some point, but opted to just keep going with it. Because the judge, I think, is the one that finds the...
She figures it out. They find the letter from Sybil Pulaski, and she goes, Pulaski, not just Pulaski, Sybil Pulaski. Sam Westing wanted Crow's childhood friend, Sybil Pulaski, to be one of the heirs. He got Sidel Pulaski instead. And he says, gee, Judge, I never noticed that. Boy, am I dumb. But what does it mean? And she says, what it means, Mr. McSuthers, is that Sam Westing made his first mistake, which... Let's just delve into this character's mind for a minute and being told that and being like, oh no, like she's figured me out.
Do you think he doesn't figure out that it's a mistake until that moment?
I think he's figured it out before then,
like
after he's put things in motion and before then. And I think it's really joyful for him to see her come up with it and to be able to play like the idiot. And he even like, I feel like in some ways he really is laying it out for her. So he does the Crow biography.
Right.
And he says, married at 16, divorced at 40, ex-husband's name, Windy Windclopple, which we find out is the fifth alias of Sam Westing, which that to me seems like would be a very easy thing to fact check.
Yeah.
That never really happens. Like that Sam Westing, like the sort of public figure Sam Westing changed his name. It almost looks like he's like putting it in front of her being like, figure this out. Yeah, please figure this out.
Yeah, I think that stuff was a lot harder to figure out before records were so readily available.
Yeah.
Before Wikipedia. Because now it's like, oh, yeah, of course, like Cary Grant's real name is whatever it is. I forget what it is. Bad example. But like...
Wendy Winklopple.
But of course, like all these famous people's like real names or whatever, and it's like really accessible information now. But I think it just was less so.
Yeah.
In the 70s. Yeah. The Winklopple, I think, was the first time I was like, wait a minute.
Well, then a few pages later, they come across the Grace Windsor Wexler, and they're like, oh, Windklopple is her maiden name. That must be the connection. You're like, yes, but there's a bigger connection.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many, like, so much minutia.
Why don't you think Crow recognizes him? Like, do you really think... It just makes me so nervous that, like, I could be married to someone for my whole formative life. Like
16 to 40.
Yeah. The majority of my formative life. And, like, not recognize them post-car accident.
Yeah.
That seems crazy to me.
I think that's a bit of...
It's so sad.
There are a couple, like, suspensions of disbelief that has to happen for this novel to take place. Yeah. And I think that's one of them.
Well, she's also gone a little bit crazy, but it's still surprising that she doesn't recognize him, and, like, really, really sad that she never gets the, like, forgiveness that she sort of needs from him.
I think it's sad, too, that she has this sort of, like, strange affinity for Angela and the whole...
Because she looks like her daughter.
Novel, and she keeps saying, like, you look like Violet, the Westing daughter. And to find out that, like, that's her own daughter that killed herself because she could see Angela being pushed into the exact same situation.
Yes.
Like, ugh, how heartbreaking. And also... It's crazy. She does nothing, though. She doesn't step in. She doesn't make a speech being like, follow your heart, your dreams. She just sort of continues to play that, like...
She still can't be the mother she wants to be. Yeah, she's still locked into her understanding of what she thinks is right, but she knows what she did the first time wasn't, and so she's trying to do something different. The Theo and Chris's parents are not included because they would have recognized Bertha, right?
Oh. But Bertha lives in the building they live in.
I know, but they never see her, I guess.
I still... here's the thing.
Yeah.
Even at the end of this, when everything sort of comes together and you get this resolution and you sort of figure out what the Westing game was, there are so many factors that I still don't understand.
Like what?
Like why certain people were in it to begin with, and sort of why he wanted to implicate Crow in the first place. I guess you could say, like you said, that it was sort of this revenge fantasy kind of thing.
13 Reasons Why Crow is in this game.
But he ends up giving her money in the end. And so, which seems strange to me. I'm like, if he really wanted to have this like revenge fantasy, why does he let her off in the end?
Yeah.
Is it just to torture her? She doesn't really get tortured, though. You know,
I think part of it is, and I can't figure out if it's because of his partnership with Ford or whether he's decided ahead of time. But I think he did it explicitly for the revenge. And then in talking with Ford and like having to her desire to save Crow from whatever the evil plan is, like, helped him turn a corner and helped him just, like, let go. I mean, it seemed to be his farewell tour.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like these aliases were, like, for him, like, he kept trying to live life and it not going the way he wanted to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Although, arguably, both Sandy and Barney seem to be made up primarily within the last 2 months. They seem to be specific to this endeavor as opposed to Sam Westing and Julian Eastman, who Eastman is actively and visually taking over the company.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it was, this sort of, I am letting this part of me die and I'm moving on. And in order to do that, I need to reconcile this anger I have for my ex-wife.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to do it.
But then also, there's another game. Figure out who I am and I'll come mentor you.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know if you got the gist, but, like, I don't know if you felt the same way, but from the very beginning of the novel, it, to me, was pretty obvious that, like, Turtle was going to save the day.
Yeah.
She was just such a broad an interesting character. Like that of course you I feel like she has a bigger role to play versus a lot of these other interesting people, Theo and Doug and all of these adults. But there was something always special about Turtle, and it's true. She ends up being the one that figures it all out. But at the end, the last 10 pages is a 5 years later epilogue, and then a unknown 20 years later epilogue. Which I think that certain people, from what I've had discussions in the past about this book, a lot of people kind of have differing feelings about. Because it is kind of taking this novel and tying it up in that like nice little like rom-com bow that happens. I use rom-com because that's historically the type of story that ends all things tied up very neatly. But I love it.
Shakespeare did it first, but fine.
All right, Shakespeare. We get it. You're great. Whatever. But I loved it. I think that to end this just with like the way that things ended with the game would have been a disservice to these characters.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see sort of like the people, I think it was a little bit heavy-handed in the sense that like, oh, the things you do as a kid are the things that you still do as an adult. Like I'm a runner and now I'm an Olympic runner. Like this and now I'm this.
To be an Olympic runner, you have to run from
of course.
that age.
Of course. It was a little bit heavy-handed. I will acknowledge that and I will appreciate that, but I liked it. I liked being able to be told how things end up. And I think the most interesting part of the epilogue, and I would be curious to know your thoughts, are that Angela and Denton Deer end up together.
Oh, I loved it. I loved that. Oh, you didn't like it?
No, I just think it's so interesting. The entire book is sort of set up for Angela to be so uncertain about her future with him and so uncertain about her as a person, and then to find out like, okay, she took some time, she sort of found herself as a person and then still came back and found like that love still existed between them and that like it wasn't just an arranged marriage by her mother, Grace Windsor Wexler.
I don't think it was. I think they met in school and actually did like each other, but because they stopped being the people that they each liked, they weren't able to stay together in a way that felt strong. So that when they were able to go and be the people that they wanted to be, they could find that relationship
and
again.
come back to each other. I thought it was lovely.
Yeah, I loved it. I think for me, the only thing that I was like, this is a little too convenient is who's on first, who's on second, who's on third, who's on fourth, and who's on fifth.
Yeah. She's a successful restaurateur now.
Yeah.
I liked it, though. Grace needed to find her purpose, She just wanted to be, like, fancy for the sake of being fancy.
Yeah.
And I think that her and her husband's relationship was kind of strained because, like, he couldn't really provide that for her.
Yeah.
And she just needed to go off and do her own thing. And I loved that about it,
The night that they get drunk and, like, she... so sweet.
So good.
Can we talk about how, like, inappropriate it is that she constantly is, like, talking about how great Angela is and how bad Turtle is?
It's awful.
So bad.
Which is doubly strange because Angela is so self-conscious and sort of meek and mild and not really, like, living her true life.
Yeah.
And Turtle is like this wonderfully like eccentric, strong, brave, wonderful character. And like
stock market follower.
Yeah. How interesting. And for a mother just being like, no, this is the child I want, like the China doll kind of child. And this other one that's, we call her Turtle, which is...
Because she looked like a turtle when she was born, like popping her head out of the blanket.
So funny. There's a lot of resentment there, I think, with both children. Obviously, Turtle feels pushed over or looked over and not supported and all of this stuff. And she gets the closet for a bedroom.
Yeah.
And Angela, like, resents all of the attention that she gets and doesn't feel like she deserves it, which in a lot of ways she doesn't. She hasn't... She hasn't accomplished anything in her life other than
getting married,
getting a man, which is not an accomplishment. Everyone, that's not.
What is with her obsession with the stock market, though? Like, what a weird thing to be into.
What a great thing to write into a character that's like a preteen.
But it's weird because her dad's a bookie, so it feels like a little bit like an addiction.
Yeah, very possibly. But her dad even turns his life around.
Yeah. Begins cracking down on people like himself.
Yeah, everyone just sort of finds their place in the epilogue. And I just think it's really fun to see.
I think it's okay because, I mean, obviously it's okay because it's great, but it's okay because it's like all a product of this guy's manipulation.
Yeah.
Like he even manages to create a world in which Turtle can't tell her husband like who she goes to visit every Saturday.
That I didn't understand.
I know. Why does she keep it a secret? I really don't get it. In a way, I feel like it undercuts the success that she has because I feel like she thinks that she's owing it all to him, which financially, like he does,
he mentors her.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it does them both a disservice to not credit him in this way. And it's weird because she decides, it seems, in her faux court scene, which, played all the right notes for me.
Great scene. Great scene.
Like the classic detective revealing step by step how the killer did it.
Sherlock
but in
Holmes.
this in this fantastic childlike way that everybody just goes along with for lack of a better option.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like arguably that last chapter, 30, the end, is sort of this sense of like how Turtle figures out to negotiate the world is sort of a guide or a key to like how we can keep moving through it, except for the fact that she does not tell anybody about Julian Eastman and Sandy and Sam Westing all being the same person. Okay, so I have two illusions. Here's the first one. The first one is sort of a parable. And it's, again, a very veiled, thinly veiled illusion. So Turtle says to Sandy, Sandy, tell me another story. Oh, no, is that what you have?
No, I have another one.
Oh,
but that's so funny.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Once, long ago, in the olden days, there was this soothsayer who predicted the day of his own death. That day came, and the soothsayer waited to die, and waited some more, but nothing happened. He was so surprised and so happy to be alive that he laughed and laughed. Then at 1 minute to midnight, he suddenly died. He died laughing. And I just feel like, man.
But then the next sentence, he died laughing, Turtle repeated thoughtfully. That's profound, Sandy. That's very profound.
But it's so true. It's like we can believe something terrible or something is definitively going to happen that appears to be out of our control, but in reality, we still have control at the end of the day. It's only surrendering control that we lose it, as long as you actively take part in your own life, you can keep doing it the way you want to do it.
Yeah. It was very difficult to pick a general illusion of life.
Yeah.
But I thought that this one was nice in the fact of like, this book is a mystery.
Yeah.
And I really loved that as a child. And I think that this kind of pertains to that. And it's they're referring to a line in the will and they're talking about. And it's the heir who wins the windfall will be the one who finds the fourth. It was so simple once you knew what you were looking for. And like for me, I love it because I was reading this book again.
Yeah.
And being able to like follow the mystery along as it happened. And also just that, isn't that a little bit how life is like?
Yeah.
Like once things happen, everything seems like it all fell into place, which is not how it feels like when it's happening.
Yeah.
But once it's all over, you're like, yeah, everything kind of happened for a reason. And I liked that.
So this is after Sidel, is that what you said? Sidel and Angela are in the hospital. Sidel for being one of the victims of the bombs and Angela for being a victim of her own bomb. There's two separate attacks. And they're next to each other at the hospital. And Turtle is coming to say, like, don't worry. I know that you did the bombings and I haven't told anybody. Don't worry about it. And to just check in on Angela. But unfortunately, Sidel is there in the room too, so she has to sort of be coded about it. But Stella is, of course, pissed off Turtle because it's like her MO. And she says, ridiculous. Sidel says to her, ridiculous. You're just jealous of your sister. Maybe, Turtle had to admit. But I am what I am. I don't need a crutch to get attention. Oh. Oh, she had gone too far. And then Angela says, Turtle didn't mean it that way, Sadal. Angela said quickly. She used the word crutch as a symbol. She meant, that people are so afraid of revealing their true selves. They have to hide behind some kind of prop. And man, if that's not true.
If that's not an illusion of life for Angela, I don't know what is.
Or me? For Sandy?
For everyone.
For everyone, yeah.
Angela hid behind her ring, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Her engagement ring. We all hide behind something. Ugh.
I love these. This is apropos, I suppose, of nothing, but I love these candles that Turtle made at camp that burn down the different colors with each hour.
Which ended up being a very big plot point later on. Well, they were the burning down of the Westinghouse.
Right, but they were the tool of most of the bombs, too.
Yeah.
Ugh. And that you could plan when the bomb was going to go off based on the number of rings. So cool.
I love it.
All right. Let's rate this sucker.
100 out of 100.
No joke attempt at all?
No joke at all.
Great.
I will rate this book 8 solid pairs of people.
Oh, nice. I was going to give it 10 4th of Julys.
1,000 fireworks.
Yay. Pew, pew, pew.
Seriously, I can't stress enough. Go out and read this book.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's just so good. And it's so fun and interesting and just it'll be a good few days of your life.
Or one day.
Depending
on how fast you read it.
I don't know.
Well,
or 1 year, depending if you read a page a year.
Yeah. Well, there's not even 300 pages, right? It's only 200 something.
173. Or a great 173 days of your life.
It'll be a great 173 days. Well, Carolyn Burns, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Carrie Caston.
That has been the 1970s.
Woo! Where will we go next?
When will we go next?
When will we go next?
You'll have to tune in a little bit to find out. We're going to take a little break, and then we'll come right back at you with a whole new decade. All right. Happy reading. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Join the conversation and tell us what you thought about the book on facebook.com/Newbery Report. That's NEWBERY Report, and at Newbery Report on Twitter. And never miss a show by making sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all your favorite podcast apps. You can also find our show and some other terrific podcasts at www.racecarradio.com. The Newbery Report is hosted and recorded by me, Carrie Caston. My co-host is Carolyn Burns. It was edited by Austin Colon. Our executive producer is David Hoffman. The Newbery Report is a production of Race Car Radio.